This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. Welcome to the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner. This is episode 226 of the podcast. And I would be lying if I didn't, or if I told you that I wasn't excited about today's episode. We are in Brussels today. Joe Stang is co-hosting with me again.
Thank you. Hi.
And we are sitting in the upstairs bar at Cantillon with Jean-Pierre Van Roy. Welcome to the podcast, Jean.
Thank you. Welcome to you.
We are excited to talk about lambic brewing today and using fruit and lambic and all the historical processes as well as the modern twists that Cantillon brings to the world of lambic. We're very excited to have this conversation. Before we do, what if you could chill your beer with a more efficient chiller? The answer, G&D Chiller's new micro-channel condensers. G&D's micro-channel condensers are highly efficient in hotter regions. Use a fraction of the refrigerant over traditional chillers, which provides less opportunity for leaks, along with lower global warming potential. G&D Chillers engineers are committed to green technology design while developing a more energy-efficient chiller for the brewing industry. Contact G&D Chillers today at gdchillers.com. Also, support for this episode comes from BSG and Fermentis, the obvious choice for beverage fermentation. Soft Brew LD20 is a new all-in-one Saccharomyces pastorianus yeast and enzyme blend designed to produce lower-carb, dry lager beers. Soft Brew LD20 is capable of high attenuation at low temperatures, making it the perfect choice for clean lagers with very low residual sugars. To harness the power of Soft Brew LD20, or to learn more about Fermentis' range of fermentation solutions, get in touch with BSG at go.bsgcraft.com/contact-us. So, Jean, the story of Cantillon has been told many times. Many people are familiar with it, but I would love, for you to share the some of that history with us now, and talk about your place in it. This is a historical. It's a family business. You are a multi-generational brewer, and you have been carrying on this tradition that has been going on for many decades here at Cantillon.
A bit more than 100 years. Yeah, we will fest in 2025 our 125th anniversary. So the brewery was founded by Paul Cantillon, my great-grandfather, and Marie Troch, my great-grandmother, and both they were coming from lambic family, both located in Lambic. Paul Cantillon was not the oldest son of the family, and so his brother took the familial brewery over in Lambic, and that's why he opened his own brewery. It's own blendery, because we were blender from 1900 to 37. He opened his own blendery here in 1900. Early of the 20th century, we had here in the area a lot of breweries. Not so far from here, we had the brewery La Bécasse, also a well-known lambic brewery, and so Marcel and Robert, the two sons of Paul Cantillon, took the brewery over in the late 20s. In 37, they bought a second-hand brewery. So they installed here this old equipment during the season 37-38. So we started some experiment during this season. Same for 38-39, and then arrives the Second War, the War II. They stopped everything because no cereals enough to brew beer. All the cereals were dedicated to bread. And the real season here started in 45-46. It was a great time for lambic. 40s, 50s, early 60s. Late 60s, mid 60s, the problem started. So we had more and more fake lambic on the market.
Sure.
What we can, fake lambic, pasteurized lambic, sweet one. And the real lambic breweries disappears. We had, for example, here, after War II, in Brussels, around 40 different lambic breweries and blender. And Cantillon was the only in the city in 83. So in less than 40 years, we lost all the lambic breweries and blenders in Brussels, except Cantillon. And late 60s, my father, Marcel Cantillon had only one daughter, my mother, Claude Cantillon, married with Jean-Pierre Van Roy. And my father, Jean-Pierre, decided to take the brewery over in the late 60s. And it was a crazy decision because it was the start of the problem for traditional lambic. So no one was asking for this such a old beer with strange flavor, strange taste, because everything was going on the sweet side. And it was indeed a crazy decision, because we were in the difficulties very fast in the early 70s. And fortunately, my father and my mother had a beautiful idea who saved the brewery. In 78, they decided to found a museum. So they opened the doors of the brewery for visitors. First of all, because of the tickets. So we made some money. And the other thing, and probably the most important one, it was the possibility to inform people about lambic. Why lambic, Gueuze, and Kriek, a real one, are beer with such a taste? Why a traditional lambic, Gueuze, or fruit beer couldn't be compared with the fake lambic and fruit beer on the market, sweetened, pasteurized, and so on.
So you could charge them a ticket to teach them why they should love your beer.
Yeah. To love your beer, believe me, in the 70s and the 80s, it was not so easy. It was not so easy.
Sure.
But if Cantillon is still present today, it's certainly due to the museum, for sure. Yeah, and because such a beer, a traditional lambic, I'm not speaking about Cantillon beers, needs, first of all, information. If you know what you are drinking it on the right way. And you can always appreciate it in the right way. Because when you taste something strange, something special, and if you don't have the right information, for the big majority of the drinkers, such a thing could be a bad thing. And I will not be back to taste it later. If you receive the right information, you are not obliged to like the product, but you know why you don't like it. And I think that's very, very important. Yeah. And so in the 80s, time were still very difficult. I started here to work after my military service in 89, and 7-8 years later, we start to feel some change in the beer world. So at the end of the 90s, something changed. We got more and more people in the brewery, but not classic visitors. More and more people who know something about lambic, who want to discover more about lambic, and the real renewal for lambic and for sour beers started 10 years later, around between 2005 and 2010. In 2014, in 2011, Cantillon reached the maximum capacity of this building.
That had to feel good after those quiet years.
In 2014, we bought another building located at 200 meters, 250 meters far from here. A building dedicated during decades to lambic storage from the brewery Limbourg till 63, 64. And we didn't know it when we decided to buy the building. So it's a beautiful coincidence. And so now we are producing 2,500 hectoliters. We are at the maximum capacity of both building. And my son Florian started here to work a bit more than 5 years ago. So it's the 5th generation in the brewery, in the Cantillon brewery, but 1 or 2 generations more if we take care of our ancestors working in lambic.
Yeah. For Americans, that's about, 2,000 barrels or so per year? Brewers' barrels?
I think, yeah, it's a bit, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's still a small artisanal production.
It's small, but it's not so small for such a type of production. Sure. You know, I try. For me, it's important to keep an eye on my production. Who more you will produce, who less you will have difficulties to keep an eye on your production. At the end of the season, so a season for us start when the temperature are cold enough, so it means end October, early November to end March, early April. At the end of the season, early April, we have here about 1,500 to 2,600 full lambic barrels. We are working mainly with 400 and 500 liters barrel. But if you want, so I don't know the taste and the flavor of all my barrels. Certainly not. That's totally impossible. And even if I will start to taste it, you have a taste evolution after 3 months. A beer can change. But I'm living with my beer, you know. I always say my lambic is a partner for me. And if you want to know your partner, you have to work with a small group of partners. If you're working with 100 people, you will know 100 people. If you're working with 1,000 people, it's difficult to know 1,000 people. That's why I think even if we would have the possibility to increase the production, maybe reach 3,000 hectoliters, so 20% more, but no more. If I want to keep my eyes on all the production, if I want to continue to feel my beer, I think we have to stop to a certain moment and not to want to produce too much.
It's important for you to be hands-on with all the beers that you make.
Yeah. Don't ask me why. It's a feeling. So I don't want to lose the hands on my production. Yeah. And if we produce too much, I think I will, and that's not the way to do.
Jean, obviously a multi-generational brewery story is an increasingly rare one. And you have Florian working here now. This isn't a situation where you go off to brewing school or business school and suddenly one day you decide, yeah, okay, I'll take it over. You grew up in here.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that was like and maybe share some memories of being in this building as a boy?
I'm working, so I was born in 67, late December 67. As I can remember, I'm working here. I was 5, 6, 7. So for me, it was a game. I remember we had here a very old a machine to clean the bottles, and my first work in the brewery was to put the bottles on the machine. And in the 70s and the 80s, my parents needed hands, and I was there. So the big majority of my vacation, I was present here in the brewery. So I grew up with the workmen, with lambic, and this brewery is probably more important than my home, because I'm now 54, not 5, and I'm living here since more than 50 years. So I know everything. The wall, the floor, the barrels, and really, when I say that we are working here with 1,500 different barrels, I know those barrels. It's something. It's more than part of my life. That's the brewery. I think that the brewery is really living. Lambic is living for sure, but here the building as well. Yeah, I feel it so. Yeah, and I'm part of it. And so I was. I worked here, every time it was possible to give a hand to my parents, and after my military service, because I was not brilliant enough at school. The way to follow was probably to learn something about beer or wine. And my goal was to go. It was in September to go to vineyards to learn something about wine, because lambic is very close to the wine world. And unfortunately, 15 days before the end of my service, the only workman in the brewery had a heart attack. And my father told me, I'm sorry, son, but I need you. And so that's why I arrived here immediately after my service. And I started without never stop, because we were only two, my father and I, to work in the brewery. So it was difficult to start to do something else, because when 50% of the people are leaving, it was totally impossible. So, and since September '89, I'm here. Not every day, but not so far. Yeah, part of my life, and I love it.
I would love to talk about how that experience and knowledge was passed down, because blending, especially in this world of lambic, is so taste and palate driven. And from generation to generation, handing down that understanding of flavor is an interesting thing. Let's talk about that. But first, is your brewery struggling to source or afford berry ingredients? Historic heat waves devastated U.S. berry crops, causing supply to dwindle and prices to skyrocket. That's why brewers are switching over to Old Orchard's craft concentrate blends, which mimic straight concentrates but at a better price point and with a more reliable supply. Is it any surprise that Old Orchard's best sellers are raspberry and blackberry flavors? Reclaim your margins and order your craft concentrates at oldorchard.com/brewer. Also, Brew Monitor from Precision Fermentation is the first real-time, comprehensive fermentation monitoring solution. Works with your existing fermentation tanks to track dissolved oxygen, pH, gravity, pressure, temperature, and conductivity in real time from any smartphone, tablet, or PC. Brew Monitor provides detailed insight into your fermentations that helps improve beer consistency, reduce tank time, and increase overall efficiency, saving your brewery time and money. Get started for 30 days risk-free. Visit precisionfermentation.com/brewing. Passing down that taste, that ability to taste, and that ability to articulate what you're tasting is such an important generational thing. Talk to me about learning to taste and blend from your father.
I don't know if we can use the word learn or learning. It's something else. It's something natural, I think. It's so I started to taste lambic with my father, with my grandfather, Marcel Cantillon. And you don't learn it really. It's you are tasting, and it's something coming natural, And with the time, I think I don't produce exactly the same blend as my father, or my father as my grandfather. But it's important to follow vision of the family, and so I never had the impression to learn tasting or to learn blending. It's a natural way to work, and that's why I'm doing the same with Florian. It's important. It's not important to try to rush about it. So if he needs time, he takes time. Blend is probably the most important work in the brewery. We have to take time to be sure. And when you are sure of what you are doing, it's something easy. I'm not thinking about a blend. I'm tasting beer, and it comes naturally to choose this type of lambic or this type of lambic. I think that if you start to think about it, if you start to learn every tasting, every lambic, no, that's you are going in a complication. And so here it's so easy when we are tasting lambic for a Gueuze blend, for example. Time to time, we are tasting a beer more dedicated for a fruit beer, or more dedicated for a Bruxelles, a 3 years old lambic. And so we mark it on the barrel. So we won't use this one for the Gueuze, but we will use it for the Crick, or for the Bruxelles, or for the Cuvée Saint-Gilloise. That's it's so easy, but it's the most important part of the job. We are working every season with a trainee. So we have interns here, 3 or 4 every season. Right now, we have, for example, the son of Stéphane Tissot.
The winemaker from
the winemaker,
Arbois.
yeah, from Arbois. We are working with the vin jaune barrel from Stéphane.
Right.
Emric is here to learn about beer, so that's also very important. And so for those people, the fun part, I think everything is fun for them during the training. But the funnest part of the job is the blend. So to taste lambic from different barrels, different age, and it's always even after 30 years for me, it's always a great pleasure as well, because we can be very disappointed if we don't find the beer we are looking for, if you don't find the right beer. But it could be also a beautiful thing when you discover amazing beers, and you can have a smile, you can have a bad face, but it's always a very nice part of the job.
Let's rewind now a bit and talk about some of your process. Our audience is brewers, and they're interested in the way you do it. As we were touring before the podcast, we walked through the brew house. I think people are familiar and have seen those pictures. Like you said, it was an 1800s brew house that was moved here and built here. It's a beautiful piece of old machinery that you all keep going. You use a typical turbid mash process. All of that's common. You have a cool ship that's very shallow with rounded edges that copper specifically built for cooling in a particular way. Compared to some other ways that others brew lambic, are there any interesting elements to the way that you do it that you insist make it your own?
I think compared to other lambic breweries, I think they all use the turbid mash. Think so. So here we start the machine at 48 degrees. So we don't warm up in the mash tun. We warm it, but only by hot water heading in the mash. So we start at 48. Then we increase to 56. 56, we empty for the first time. We empty the mash tun to pump up the wort without any filtration. So that's why the turbid mash, because the wort is totally turbid, trouble.
Right.
We empty the mash tun for the first time to pump up the turbid mash in one of the 2 boiling kettle. Hot water adding to increase to 66. Same thing. We empty the mash tun to pump up the liquid on the same boiling tun. In total, we will pump up in between 1,500 and 2,000 liters turbid mash. So for the second time, the mash tun is empty. We add again hot water to increase to 72. We stop the mixer, and after 15 minutes, we start to filter the wort, so a clear one, and we pump up on the other boiling tun. For the third time, the mash tun is empty, and to increase to 78, we bring back the turbid mash in the mash tun, and then we start the sparging, and we will extract. So we use 1,300 kilo cereals, and we will extract 9,500 liters to 10,000 liters. So very long boil, in between 3 and 4 hours. We are working with aged hop, so to avoid too much bitterness in the lambic. And at the end of the day, we pump up the beer, the wort, on the cool ship, to let it cooling for 1 night. So we let the wort for 16, 17, 18 hours on the cool ship.
You use a very long boil, 3 to 4 hours, not just for evaporation, but also to affect the utilization of your hops.
Yes, so we are working with aged hops. So it means that we let hop oxidize in contact with the air. And so to decrease the acid alpha present in hop, because we are not looking for bitterness. Lambic is an acidic beer, and we are working with the natural acidity of the beer. And we are working with hop because hop contains a natural preservative, lupulin, and we are working with a lot of hop because we need such a preservative to
it affects
keep
the way
our
the
beer.
bacteria works.
Yeah, and the other way, hop avoid the bacteria development. That's why we are mainly working with hop, but we are not looking for bitterness. But when you let hop oxidize the flour, because we are working only with the real hop flour, we don't use pellets. Develops some cheesy flavor, and the only way to avoid to find back the cheesy flavor in the beer is a long boil. So that's also another reason why we let the wort boil for 3:30, 4 hours.
It volatilizes off those cheesier compounds.
Yeah.
How do you age those hops? Are they just packed in barrels?
We buy, unfortunately, we are not. We don't have the right equipment to let the hop aged in the building. So when we buy hop, we buy it after 2 years. So for example, we are working this season with hop from the harvest 2018 and 2019. So 2 and 3 years. We got here the 19 in September. So we will keep it till the next season, but we don't keep the hop for more than 1 year normally, because we have not the right equipment to do it.
And you're using noble hops.
And we use only noble hops, yeah. So already low in alpha. Yeah.
But as we were talking about before, there's not a specific variety that you insist on. You are simply looking for rough parameters?
It's a personal choice. I like Allertau. But we are working here with Allertau, Hersbrucker, with Saaz, with Golding. Yeah.
I guess while we're talking about ingredients, I'm curious about the grist, because the classic lambic ratio would be 40% unmalted wheat, 60% barley malt. Here the percentage is a little bit different, 35,
65, okay. Yeah.
Is that significant, and has it always been that way, or why is it that?
I don't know. I apply always the same recipe. So my father used the same recipe than the grandfather. So why my great grandfather or my grandfather decided to work with 35% unmalted wheat, I have no idea.
Maybe it was more expensive one year.
I don't know, but it's in between 35 and 40. But I made 4 years ago, a bit more than 4 years ago, I made an experiment with 50% unmalted wheat. So the very old lambic in the 90s, even late 80s, were made with more wheat than malted barley. And so I made it in, if I remember well, it was during my birthday. So it's December 27 for sure, but it was in 17. December 27, 17. So we made a special brew with 50% wheat and 50% malted barley. We kept it for 4 years in the barrel. We bottled the beer 2 or 3 months ago. And the idea is to keep it till 2025 for the 125th anniversary of the brewery.
How do you like the result? Is it something you?
Yeah, it's different. It's very nice, but it's different than a classic lambic for sure. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about culture and about that coolship inoculation, because there's a lot of romantic ideas around lambic, and I'd love to get your perspective on it. Before we do that, from the rotatable pickup tube on Rogue Brewing's pilot brewhouse to the integrated hopbacks on Sierra Nevada's twin prototyping brewhouses, SS Brewtech has taken technology they invented, working with world-renowned industry veterans, and made them available to every craft brewer. To learn more about SS Brewtech's innovation list, head on over to ssbrewtech.com. Also, if you're looking for a direct partnership with an independent hop grower who is as fanatical about flavor and quality as you are, join the revolution. Hop Revolution's only reason for being is sustainably farming and processing New Zealand's most flavorsome hops. They get that great beer is not brewed to a past or a future ideal. It's an ongoing journey of fresh thinking. Hop Revolution really is only here for your beer. Let them flavor your thinking stateside directly from Hop Revolution or through Crosby Hops or Mill 95. Learn more at hoprevolution.co.nz. Let's talk about that coolship inoculation. That culture is important for every lambic brewery. It's what creates that flavor. It actually has an impact on everything from speed of fermentation to the flavor expression, and even the technical function of that beer. And so making sure that as you inoculate in that coolship, that it is that culture is very important for every lambic brewer. Yeah. It's especially important for you all.
It's very important. It's probably the most important part of the brew. It's the natural inoculation, but it's still very mysterious because we don't play any role in it. That's why I'm not and I don't like to be called a master brewer because a master you control something about your beer, your inoculation. Here, when I'm leaving the brewery at 6:30 in the evening, and when my wort is on the coolship cooling, naturally, I don't control anything. That's I let the nature doing it, and I'm a bit a lazy brewer. It's and so it's very, very important. But no one knows exactly the process during this natural inoculation. The thing is that the building is very important because every brewery develop in his building a natural microflora, and that's why every lambic brewery will produce a different lambic because of the nature of the atmosphere in the brewery. And so that's why we try here to use as less as possible chemical products. Certainly not in the coolship room, and if possible, not in the area, in the attic. Yeah. For the rest, I let Mother Nature doing the job.
Some lambic producers will pre-acidify wort to try to change some of the dynamic or protect the lambic before or as it is spontaneously inoculated. You all don't do that?
No, it's a very old technique. Or you can acidify it with acidic product, or a very old technique was to pump up an old lambic, very acidic, on the cool ship to blend it with wort. So the goal is to decrease the pH and to avoid the development of pediococcus. Pedio are responsible to what we call it the sickness, the illness. You call it more in US roppiness.
Right.
And if you are working in this way, yes, maybe you protect your beer, but I think you produce it first of all a bit fast. So the lambic will be ready in some months. Here, we never acidify the wort, and our beer are sick, are roppy during the first spring and summer after the brew. And so it means that we need here minimum 8 to 9 months before to use our beer. But it's a normal way for the beer. You know, it's like the childrens. They have also to be sick, to have some illness, to be a bit stronger later in their life. I have the same point of view for my beer. That's the first thing. And if you acidify the wort, you certainly avoid the pedio development. So the beer won't be sick, won't be roppy. But that's a personal opinion. If you avoid the development of pedio, you avoid probably also the development of other yeast and other bacteria. And so for me, it's a lack of complexity for the beer. And that's why we never acidify the wort, never.
The wild yeast is the most important piece to you. Bacteria or souring bacteria like lactobacillus happens.
Yes, sure, and we need it.
Yeah.
No pedio, no lactic, no acidity in the beer. So we need bacteria, but the most important thing we are looking for yeast fermentation. Yeah, so yeast has to take the control of the fermentation. It happens in my brewer life. It happens once in 2011. So we made the 2 last brews too late in the season. Spring 2011 was quite warm, and on the 2 last brews, I lost 80% of the production. So it goes in a bacteria fermentation, and it was very difficult because I remember I have some pictures of it. We opened it, I don't remember, 15, 20 barrels, and all the beer goes to the drain. It was very difficult, yeah, and not difficult because we lost money, but it was for me. It was my mistake, and
you tried to push it. You tried to get too much.
But it happens once. It happens once. It won't happen no more, for sure.
You learned the lesson on that one, sure. So as this ages in barrels, you don't taste for a year.
No, because it doesn't matter. So we start to use the lambic from the previous winter season in September. That's why we start the season in September here at the brewery. And we always start with the beer brewed in October, November. So it's not. We could taste a lambic brewed in March, but in September such a beer won't be ready for sure. So we start always with the first brews from the previous season, And we blend it with the 2, the 3, or the 4 years, because time to time, every year I keep beer for 4 years. And the beer, we have to say that the beer are ropey, but only during the first summer after the brew. So when the beer are going out of ropiness, it's okay. The beer won't be ropey no more.
This is a more weather-dependent brewery than most breweries. The temperature outside is important for how things happen in that cool ship. So you had kind of an unusual perch from which to observe climate change in the past decade or longer. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you've observed as somebody who needs these cool winter evenings, and maybe how this year is going and compared to recent years.
So here, the right temperature for a brew, for me, are a small frozen, -2, -3, to 7, 8 degrees if the weather is windy enough. So to evacuate steam and so on. So it's correct. So it means that we have about 10 degrees, a fork of 10 degrees for the brew. But today it's not enough, and that's crazy. So that's why we are not. When I hear people speaking about lambic and who says lambic brewers need cold winter. No, we don't need cold winter. We need normal winter, simply normal winter.
Right.
But unfortunately, we don't have normal winter no more. This summer is certainly not a cold one. But fortunately, it's not a warm one. So we still know we are in mid-February. We canceled 2 brews, if I remember well, it was before New Year, because we had 14 degrees during the night, 14 Celsius. So it's crazy. So when you have to cool 7,000 liters wort, and the wort arrive as 85, 90 degrees on the cool ship, and if you have 14 degrees outside, it's impossible to reach 18 to 20 degrees the day after. And so we're looking a lot to the weather forecast. Every brew in the morning, in the evening, because in 10 hours the temperature can change. Not a lot, but the temperatures can change. And in the cool ship, so we are at the top of the brewery. It's a windy room. We have shutters on both sides of the walls, and depending on the temperature, we close it, we open it, we open the windows to try to cool the wort as best as possible.
You're also taking sustainability steps in order, because that weather matters to you, even though it's a small thing, installing solar panels, working more organically where you can, because you feel like that's going to help in your small way.
In fact, I don't want, if the next generation, my son or the next one, will be in the problem because of the global warming. If my son of the next generation is coming by me in 20 or 30 years and said, "Grandpa, I have a problem. I can't brew no more because it's too warm in Brussels. Did you try to solve the problem?" I could say, yes, it was at our small level. We tried to do something, and we pollute, so we take part of the global warming. But we try in the last 20 years to reduce it as much as possible. So everything is here organic. We have a photovoltaic panel. So we produce our own electricity. We have 96 panels on the roof. We produce a part for warm water. So we have solar panel for warm water. We recycle everything: glass, cartons, fruits. We are working here with about 50 tons of fresh fruits, pomace, and so on. We recycle everything. We started also to produce, to transform cherries and raspberries in a puree. use it in some gelateria or to produce to produce ice cream.
Your spent fruit goes into ice cream.
Yeah.
Very
and
cool.
believe me, it's very nice. So no, it's. I think it's simply we are working only with one vehicle here. The big majority of my people are coming by bicycle. I'm doing it myself since '91. So when you are working with such a brewery producing such a natural beer, you have to be close to the nature, and you have to be really in the same feeling. It's so we destruct everything. Human destruct, unfortunately, a lot of things. I don't want to destruct my brewery and my lambic, and so the only way is to try to take care for what we are doing.
For sure.
And that's why if we can do something more, we will. For sure.
Yeah. I want to talk, you mentioned fruit, and I think that's a good subject for us to talk about now. Adding fruit to lambic is something that you are very passionate about. You mentioned wanting to work as a winemaker earlier in your career and then having to come to the brewery. But you've been able to enjoy that, working with that people in that world, working with winemakers, as well as making classic beers, like Loup Pepe Creek and others. Talk to me about the philosophy that you use around using fruit with lambic.
First of all, so the traditional fruits used for lambic was creek, so sour cherry. We used raspberry before War One, but raspberry disappears from all the lambic brewery after War One, and my father was the first one to reintroduce raspberry in lambic in 73 or 4, if I remember well. And in the 80s, it's also my father who we start to produce a grape lambic, because grapes lambic was a common beer produced in the south east of Brussels, a bit out of the city, in the area of Overijs and Jezusaik. In those cities, people produce grapes, but green grapes in 100 glasses, and the grapes who were not good enough to be sold were used by the breweries to produce grapes lambic. And the last, I think, if I remember well, the last brewery in this area closed in the late 60s, early 70s. And so my father had the idea to reuse a grape to produce a special beer for an association here in Brussels, Cuvée des Neuf Nations. It was the name of the beer. And so we had more and more. We paid more and more attention to grapes, to wine, and the natural thing happens. So it was to start to work with grapes coming from wineries, and the first experiment was something beautiful, really beautiful. It was a mix of lambic with grapes, a blend of Merlot and Cabernet Franc, coming from two of the most important chateaux in France, Château Bel Air and Château Ozone in Saint-Émilion. So premier Grand Cru classé, so two great wines. And my father met the manager of those two chateaux, Pascal Delbecq, and Pascal asked to my father if he agreed to make an experiment of grapes coming from Château Bel Air and lambic, and they made it for the first time in '93, and it was a success. And the two first experiments were made in Saint-Émilion, and so it was great. The result was great, and it was the start of the story of lambic, the magic story of lambic with Wine World. And now we are working with a lot of wineries, but not only with fresh grapes. We are working with pomace. During our tour, we tasted a new experiment with Barbera coming from the famous Barolo region in Italy. So we are working with pomace, we are working with must, and we are working with lees. So for some barrels, I ask to my friends barrels freshly emptied, uncleaned, so with lees, with some wine in it, and for some of them it give a beautiful result. The well-known, the most known beer is the La Vie Belge. So the lambic aged in vin jaune, so the famous oxidative wine from Jura.
The Jura, yeah.
So close to the vin jaune is also linked with the history, with the way to work with lambic, and that's why it was one of my dreams to try to link those two worlds, and it works more than well. It's a beautiful beer.
We're drinking some now, and it's fantastic.
Wonderful. So just to be clear, you rack the fresh lambic wort onto the lees in these wine barrels, and then
no wort, lambic.
Right.
So it's already been
lambic.
fermented.
Oh, it's already fermented lambic.
Yeah. It's both. In fact, when we are working with vin jaune barrels, for example, I'm lucky enough to receive 2 or 3 barrels every year, and we are working with one lambic filled with lambic wort, another one with a 2-year-old lambic. And so the result is totally different. With wort, the beer is not so delicate. We have a bit a lack of finesse in the beer, but we have more character. Lambic is more fine, is more balanced, but maybe with a lack of character. And so we reblend both, and that's the result. So we are working with wort and lambic.
That's a fun way to do it. And do you do that also with these wine grape blends on lees? You use multiple?
No, when we are working with grapes, we are working only with lambic. We don't work with wort.
Talk to me about the difference between using grape pomace or must and using crushed graped or pressed grapes.
When we are working,
or do you press them? I should say.
When we are working with pomace, we are working with grapes already used to produce wine. So, what is pomace exactly? Our friends use a method. So they let the grape macerate with the liquid, with the juice, and they let it ferment with the grapes. Normally, to produce wine, for white wine, they press the grapes to extract the juice. They let the juice ferment. For red wine, they press it. They let the grape macerate with the skin to give the color for some days, no more. Here we are mainly working with people who let the grapes and the fruit itself macerate for months, even for time to time, not so far from 1 year. And so a very, very long maceration. They press the fruits to extract the wine, and they sent me the spent grapes. So normally they don't use it no more because after such maceration, they don't distill it. So they put the grapes on the vineyards to fertilize the vineyards. Here, when we reuse it, we are focused on the wine flavor. So we will try to extract from the pomace the wine flavor, because the grapes was grapes dedicated to produce wine. When we are working with fresh grapes, we are working with a fruit. And so there we will more focused on the fruit flavor. So it's not so we have a bit more with sugar in the fruit. in a pomace with no sugar no more. And so we are working with the fruit. We will try to produce something a bit more mellow, and we will work on the fruitiness, not on the wine flavor and the wine taste.
So that pumice would also create a slightly lower alcohol, but also more.
No, because in fact, it depends if the pumice was pressed a lot or not. I don't like to work with a pumice too dry,
right,
or too wet. So it's
sure.
But no, my friend knows what I'm looking for. And so in the pomace you have still alcohol, and so we will always a bit increase the alcohol as well. Yeah, and certainly for the fresh grapes, because fresh grapes bring sugar and Saccharomyces coming from the skin.
skins.
Yeah, and so we will classic lambic is a beer. Cantillon lambic is a beer around 5.5 ABV. For the grapes lambic, we are around 7.5 for time to time for the Saint Venus.
What does the maceration process look like? How do you go about doing that maceration?
So you mean about the
time, temperature,
the blend? So temperature. We don't control the temperature, so it depends of the weather. Right now, for the
stainless
cherry,
steel wood,
cherry and raspberry, we are working with frozen fruits, so we can produce during the whole season beer with the same flavor, the same taste. 15 years ago, we still worked with fresh cherries and fresh raspberries, and all the fruits arrived at the same time in July. And the problem was we had no space enough in the cellar to bottle all the production at the same time. So it means that we kept some cherry or some raspberry lambic for 2 months in the wooden barrels, and other for 8 months. But a beer with 2 months maceration, or the same beer with 8 months maceration, the final result is totally different. And so working with frozen fruits, for us, it's the easy way to produce a beer always with the same balance. And yeah, we are working with the temperature we have in the brewery. So when we receive, so we got last week a bit more than 1,000 kilo cherries, frozen cherries. But you have right now in the brewery around 10 degrees. So it's not so easy to defrozen 1,000 kilo fruits at 10 degrees.
Right.
And so lambic will take a lot of time before to start to ferment, probably more than 1 month. So for the fermentation, it depends of the type of fruits. Apricots, for example, we takes only 4-5 weeks maceration and fermentation, no more. For grapes or for scar-baked cherries, the fruits we use for the Loup Creek, let's say 3, time to time 4 months maceration. So for the maceration, it depends of the type of fruits. I'm tasting a lot. So if I think the beer is ready, we will bottle it, even if the fermentation was shorter than foreseen. So it's not a question of we don't work with time. We work with flavor, with taste. If beer is tasty enough, if I think that the beer is ready, we will use it.
I'd like to ask about the cherries, actually, because I think you said earlier that Scared-baked cherry is the best fruit for lambic. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what's happening with Scared-baked cherries locally, as far as how hard it is to source them, but also where else are you getting cherries from, and what is it you're looking for in a cherry for your lambic?
So Scared-baked cherry was the cherry to produce lambic till the 60s. But this type of cherry was used only to produce lambic and to make some liquor. But because of the disparition of lambic breweries because all those the traditional lambic breweries disappears from the market. The scar-baked cherries disappears as well because the only use for those fruits was to produce lambic. The fruit was dedicated to lambic. No more lambic, no more scar-baked cherries, and so it was very, very difficult to work with scar-baked cherries. Now some people replant scar-baked cherry trees. We did the same, but there is also now the global warming. Last year was a real catastrophe for fruits in general because we had end of spring, end of March was warm, really warm, and so the nature blows up, and around 10 April we had frozen, but in some region -8, and so all the flowers disappears, everything was burned, and we lost a lot. So we had a bad spring. Summer was rainy, cold, and last year we had only 109 kilos scar-baked cherries. 100. So Loup Épécrie 2019 will represent, I don't remember exactly, in between 400 and 500 bottles. No more. So the beer is beautiful. It's really a very, very good Loup Épécrie, but so we will only open the bottles here at the brewery for in the bar for the people lucky enough to taste it. But yeah, unfortunately, and for me, it's really very pity to work with to have to work with other types of cherries, so good one, but not as good as Loup Épée or as scar-baked cherries. It's because as you said, it's for me the best fruit dedicated to lambic for sure. Yeah.
Why is that? And then what is it you're looking for in the cherries you're sourcing from elsewhere? Is there particular varieties you like?
Scar-baked cherries, you have everything in it. So you have it's an acidic fruit, but when the fruit is ripe enough, you have a beautiful sweetness. The fruit is really complex, very complex, giving a beautiful color. So a color more red, more black than a lot of other type of sour cherries. It's a perfect fruit to work with lambic. And you know, we are working with cherries added to lambic since probably 200 years. If our ancestors choose this type of fruit to be blended with lambic, it's because it was the best, simply. And now we are working with cherries coming from Serbia and Turkey. Very good one. I'm happy about it, but yeah.
As we were touring earlier, you mentioned that about 80% of fruit is macerated in stainless tanks and about 20% you're still doing in wooden barrels. Yeah. Talk to me about the difference between the wood barrel aging with fruit and the stainless steel aging with fruit.
I don't think we have a real difference because see, if we are still working with wood, it's because of the volume. So we are working with stainless steel if we receive more than 400 kilo of fruits. Less than 400, I will use only the half, 2/3 of my tank capacity. So I prefer to use 400 and 500 liters barrels with the fruits. And I don't think we have a real difference. We are working with lambic aged 1, 2 or 3 years in the wooden barrels, and we will keep it with the fruits, as I told you, for some weeks, maximum 3 or 4 months. I think there is no time enough to have a real difference in between wood and stainless steel.
It's just extra capacity.
It's extra capacity. It's a way easier to work with stainless steel. It takes less surface,
right?
And so it's easier. But it's also new. So we are working with steel tanks since a bit more than 10 years, only 10 years. So during decades, we use it only wooden barrel.
But that also coincides with even more and more fruit, because your customers also love these fruit expressions of your beer. Talk to me about some of the new fruits and new ingredients that you've been experimenting with and bringing into lambic, because even though this is such a traditional focused brewery, you also enjoy experimenting and trying new things.
Sure, but for me, the most important beer in the brewery was, is, and will always be Gueuze. Okay, I have to say it first.
Sure.
And Gueuze represent always for us,
Yeah,
let's say 35-40% of our production. And so fruit, the last we spoke about it, the last really new experiment was pomace. I visited in 2017 or 18 the beautiful winery in Campania in south of Italy, Cantillon, and they are producing there. They are crazy people, because they craziness, but a type of craziness I love.
very passionate.
So they are, when we speak about terroir, I always think to Cantina Giardino, because they are working only with local grapes variety. All the barrels are made in local wood, and they are working with amphora. And to build their amphora, they use clay from their own soil. So it's everything is coming from the area. And we tasted there a beautiful wine, Sofia. So it's a wine made with Greco di Tufo, so a local grape, white grape, and macerated for 5, 6, 7 months in amphora. And so the wine was really beautiful. The winemaker asked me if I was ready for an experiment. I said yes, and so we started to work with pomace. I was surprised myself, because we are not the first brewery working with pomace. I already tasted beer made in this way in Italy and in Spain, and the beer were good, but the expression of grapes was not present enough in the beer, in my opinion. And so that's why I was really surprised to extract all those components, all those flavor from a grape already used to produce wine.
As we were tasting that earlier, you're right. There is a heft to it. It feels big and has an intensity.
The Barbera we tasted together, so it's a new experiment made with my friend Filippo from Cascina degli Ulivi in Italy, Melotti. Blind tasting, I think that a big majority of people will go on the wine side and not probably on the beer side. Yeah.
It even has that tannin, that nice tannin that's familiar when you have,
But that's a typical thing when you are working with pomace. It's more, you have more tannin than with fresh fruit, and those tannin reminds more the wine side. Yeah.
As we're coming to a close here, let's talk about that big picture. You mentioned that your son is the next generation. This is a family brewery. You plan on passing that on and keeping the business, moving forward to future generations. Is that's the future goal?
I hope. I never obliged, I never asked to Florian to join me in the brewery. So he did it by himself. So I hope, really, it's or one of my son. I have a second son, Sylvain, or one of my nephew. But someone has to take the brewery over. Yes, sure. And it
you
has
still
to
you have a few more years left.
Yeah. For me, yes, I hope. It's I won't stop tomorrow.
Right.
And and such an industry has to stay in the family. Yeah.
What do you hope to achieve in the next 10 years?
As I told you, we plant some schaerbeek cherry trees. So I hope it will work, and we could produce some of our own schaerbeek cherries. The brewery itself, I hope to for another space, not to increase the production, but to have more facilities in the work itself. So we have a lack of space here. Time to time, it's not so easy to work. If we could have some more facilities in the job, could be nice as well. Because the brewery is a museum. We talk about it. When the museum is really running, it's 40,000 people a year. And so the idea should be to dedicate the brewery, a part of the brewery, to the visitors, and another part for the work, for the production. So that's why maybe some more space, if possible, some more space in a close area around the brewery. That's it. For the rest, I'm happy of what I'm doing, what I'm brewing, what I'm drinking. So.
I think you mentioned your father Jean-Pierre is working on a project involving the story of the brewery. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So it's his last. He says it himself. His last project. We will build a new floor, a second floor in this building, because the brewery is in fact located in two different buildings. So in this building, the right one, when you're looking to the front of the brewery, we will increase the building, and we will build a second floor dedicated only to the museum. So the goal is to make a type of exposition with old material, all the document of the brewery, of the family. My father is working on the lambic history in the Brussels area, working on the family history. So it's very weird, because we discovered things ourselves about our ancestors, and so because people coming to there in the brewery are visiting. It's a live museum, so they are visiting a brewery, still working, but they don't have any documents, any things to see about lambic history itself, about old breweries, the lambic breweries located in the cities some decades ago. And so we will show to the people that Brussels was a very active city, speaking about lambic, and that Cantillon, the Cantillon history start here in Anderlecht in 1900, but is older than 1900.
It's such a beautiful embrace of history and a gorgeous way of making beer. And it's not just the technique, the taste, and what you're producing is beautiful, beautiful as well. G&D's micro-channel condensers use a fraction of the refrigerant over traditional chillers. Soft Brew LD20 is a new all-in-one yeast and enzyme blend designed to produce dry lager beers. Old Orchard's craft concentrate blends mimic straight concentrates, but at a better price point. Get detailed insight into your fermentations with Brew Monitor risk-free. Put SS Brewtech's advances to work in your brew house, and try New Zealand's most flavorful, sustainably farmed hops from Hop Revolution. If you enjoy the podcast, of course, we'd love your support. Go to beerandbrewing.com, click on the subscribe button. If you're planning to launch a brewery, check out our next Brewery Accelerator in Portland, Oregon this July at breweryworkshop.com. Jean, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
My pleasure.
It's been a very...
Thanks for your coming.
Of course. If people want to learn more about Cantillon, where do they find you?
Here. No, I'm here every time. It's that's also why I think people are like to come at the brewery. We are always present. Me, Florian, my son, my sister Magali, the Cantillon families. When we say that it's a family-run brewery, it's a real family. Yeah. And even time to time, my father and my mother. So if you are lucky enough, all the family will be present.
Oh, fantastic! Thanks for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.